So returning again to Stoicism and war. Now, you mentioned that Marcus Aurelius's writings came like when he was on the battlefield, maybe couldn't sleep, he was writing. Now, has Stoic philosophy been employed by warriors and soldiers sort of continually since then? Or was your work a revival in a way?
Good question. Um, it was something of a revival, picking up on the fact that Stockdale had written this book. What's it called? Sort of philosophical reflections of an aviator or something like that. And so, as I said, he had been an influence of the Naval Academy and had taught in at the Naval War. I think it was the Naval War College previously, and even maybe Virginia Military VMI Institute. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, he had translated his experience in Vietnam into some writings. Yeah, and he became a kind of his work was known within the military community. Were philosophers really taking it seriously or thinking that much about it? I don't think so until I wrote Stoic Warriors. Um, and that really was in part because I wanted to protect a lot of people that I worked with and who were so fascinated by this idea of Stoicism with a little s, that this wasn't real Stoicism, that Stoicism has really prescient views and important views about emotions. It's not just about sitting on them, but it's about ways you can manage them, a kind of cognitive behavioral therapy of sorts. And they also had really important views about the place. I mean, Seneca, if you look at it really carefully, he doesn't say you can't grieve, you can't cry, you can't shed tears. Those are all overstatements. So I wanted to set the record straight, you might say, and put out there both a plausible as well as healthy view of Stoicism, if we were going to go forward and think of Stoicism as a natural fit for the military. That said, of late, I have been told, not personally, that James Mattis, who was Secretary of Defense and top Marine, puts in his haversack Marcus Aurelius when he goes downrange. So, a tattered copy. So
That's poetic.
it's carried by, and I've heard others, some of my students have told me they carry Marcus Aurelius in their backpack and give it to some of their subordinates. So,
Hmm.
and Naval, I know a fair bit about philosophy at West Point and the Naval Academy. And
About how it's taught, you mean?
yeah,
Okay.
because a lot of my students end up being teachers there and on faculty there. And I go and give talks there, and it's pretty sophisticated. Just War Theory is extremely sophisticated. Michael Walzer has taught there. They've been teaching Michael Walzer almost since the book came out, Just and Unjust Wars. So,
So when I think about all the ways in which Stoicism might be applied to war,
mhm,
it's hard to, I mean, even enumerate all of them. There are just so many. But since you mentioned belonging,
mhm.
I one thing that comes to mind is the fraternal, and maybe this is redundant, fraternal brotherhood among soldiers in
Mhm.
combat. Now,
Mhm.
does Stoicism have anything to say about this sort of relationship in particular? I mean, that
Mhm.
image you described of somebody, a torso separated from its legs, separated from its arms and hands, this sort of thing. I can see that being a very powerful image on the battlefield, conveyed to one's subordinates.
Um, yeah. It, Another image that Marcus gives, if you teeth have to work together, upper and lower jaw. um, we have to be in sync is one of his phrases, and you can kind of see that. I don't know if specifically the Stoics talk a fair bit about the idea of belonging or a brotherhood of arms, a cadre. I have written a bit about Stoic social grit in the sense of you know cover each other's back, bring home your troops, never leave a fallen comrade behind. Those are ingrained in military persons, and I think what happens, again, this is tangentially related to Stoicism, is that there's a lot of suffering of moral injury due to war. And by moral injury, I mean the moral anguish that comes from moral conflicts, or moral transgressions where you could perpetrate them knowingly or unknowingly, where you could witness them, or where you're the victim of them. And that's somewhat different from post-traumatic stress. Post-traumatic stress is a diagnosis that came out in 1980 in the DSM Diagnostic and Statistic Manual. And it was really to do both with war and rape, as it happened in Boston, noted by a researcher.
In Boston, did you say?
Boston Lying in Hospital, Brigham and Women's, noted by a remarkably good psychologist at the time, Judy Herman. And there was this confluence of Vietnam veterans coming home and rape victims feeling like that they both were the agents of wrongdoing and also the victims. And so the idea of that's post-traumatic stress, but post-traumatic stress by and large came to be signally, because of the time, 1980s, a fear response. You were responding to stress. You're responding to life threat, and you can't control it. And it's adaptive initially, but then it gets maladaptive as it persists. Moral injury, which is talked a lot about in war circles in the VA and Veterans Administration and the like, has to do with, as I said, the sense in which your moral identity is shattered either because of what you've done as an actor, what you've suffered as a victim, or what you've seen as an up-close bystander. And all the emotions that come with that, shame, guilt, resentment, betrayal, distrust, are brought to bear. And this happens in war. You can't bring your buddy home. You survive, someone else doesn't survive. You're standing a foot away, he gets blown up by a grenade, you don't. You knock down the door where you definitely hear armor or bullets on the other side, and you kill a kid who, might be put as a bit of a decoy on the other side of the door. And I mean, checkpoints. You tell people to stop. It's the third, fourth warning, and then you shoot, or you give someone an order to shoot, and you end up killing someone on the way to a hospital with a family in the car. Those, I'd say, are places where you want to know, what does Stoicism say about that? Can you be strong, resilient, have grit in the face of devastating moral injuries of those sorts? Mm-hmm. And the Stoics, don't have a ton to say about that, except I've written in Stoic Wisdom in Seneca's plays. I think there's some remarkable plays. In Hercules Rages is one of them. Trojan Women is another, in which there is discussion about being undone by your own transgressions and feeling suicidal as a result. Heracles or Hercules comes back from his 12 labors. His stepmother Juno has one more horrible deed that he has to that she wants him to commit, and she drugs him, a little like Athena sometimes does in Philoctetes. She drugs him, and he ends up killing his whole family. He bursts into this world from Hades, eager to see his family, then goes mad and ends up killing them. And he wants to kill himself. And it's a friend who says, use your heroic courage to stay your hand. And his father says, the deed is not yours, but it was your stepmother's. So those are really powerful examples to me of moral injury. And they're also powerful examples of moral bids for moral repair that are coming from a beloved father and a beloved friend to try to help this horribly devastated, racked with guilt Hercules not commit suicide at that moment.